Rome was called Imperium Sin Fine, empire without end. On the surface, it appeared as a beacon of civilization, a shining model of political and architectural brilliance, with its marble columns, grand arenas, and immortal legends that would echo through the ages. But beneath this polished facade, the reality was far darker, a legacy carved not in glory, but in blood. Rome was not just a nation. It was an unstoppable machine of conquest, fueled by the desire for power and the raw forces of fire, iron, and fear. The Roman legions left behind them a trail of annihilated cultures and erased civilizations. Entire populations vanished under their power names erased, cities reduced to ashes, and cultures obliterated in the name of imperial dominance. Rome's conquest was not just a military campaign, it was a transformation of the world as it knew it. While Roman civilization reshaped the ancient world, it did so at a cost that few dared to calculate. What we remember as civilization, others experienced as devastation. The foundation of the Roman Empire, with its far-reaching influence, was built upon acts of brutality and subjugation, wiping away everything in its path. The question we must ask is, at what cost was this empire built? One of the most horrific tools of Roman terror was crucifixion, a form of execution that was not merely designed to kill, but to break the human spirit in front of the mass. Crucifixion, known to the Romans as crux, was far more than just an execution method. It was a public spectacle, a psychological weapon used to instill fear and deter rebellion. When Rome used crucifixion, it did not simply end a life, it sent a brutal message. The Romans didn't just punish their enemies, they made examples of them. The crucifixion became a symbol of the consequences of defying Roman authority, reserved for the lowest members of society, including slaves and rebels. During the Third Servile War, the infamous rebellion led by this brutal form of punishment was taken to an unimaginable level. After the Roman forces crushed the slave army in 71 BC, the general Marcus Licinius Crassus ordered the crucifixion of more than 6,000 survivors. These men were hung along the Appian Way, a major road leading to Rome, as a stark and bloody reminder of what awaited those who dared to defy Roman authority. Their bodies lined the road for over 100 miles, turning a vital route into a grim procession of fear and submission. This wasn't just about death, it was about making a statement, erasing rebellion from memory, and turning the bodies of the fallen into public warnings. The historian Appian describes the event in detail, recounting how the crucifixion along the Appian Way served as a chilling example to anyone who might consider rebelling against Rome. Crucifixion wasn't limited to the enslaved or rebels. It became a tool of terror for any provincial uprising that threatened Roman control. In Judea, Gaul, and Britain, mass crucifixions were carried out not for justice but as an act of public spectacle, a psychological tool designed to instill total fear. In conquered cities, crucifixion poles would stand as silent threats, sometimes for months after the rebellion had been crushed. These stakes acted as enduring symbols of Roman dominance, a reminder that defiance would result in a slow and agonizing death. The execution of the rebels was not about justice in the traditional sense, it was imperial policy. The pain and suffering of the condemned was used as a form of propaganda, a lesson in submission for the entire empire. Rome perfected a form of psychological warfare that no conquered people could ignore. Crucifixion wasn't just about killing, it was about breaking spirits, instilling fear, and preventing the rise of any future challenges to Roman supremacy. Perhaps one of the most definitive examples of Rome's imperial mindset was the annihilation of Carthage. The phrase Carthago delenda est, Carthage must be destroyed, echoed through the Roman Senate, largely due to the influence of Cato the Elder. His constant repetition of this phrase, regardless of the subject at hand, embodied the Roman obsession with eradicating any threat to its supremacy. Carthage, a once thriving maritime power, had been Rome's greatest rival in the Western Mediterranean. Although Carthage had already suffered defeat in 2 previous Punic Wars, it was not enough for Rome. Victory alone would not suffice. Rome wanted not just to defeat Carthage but to obliterate it from existence, ensuring it would never rise again. In 146 BC, under the command of Scipio Aemilianus, Rome set out to fulfill the prophecy of Cato the Elder. The Third Punic War culminated in a siege that lasted over 2 years, and when the city of Carthage finally fell, its destruction was complete. The ancient historian Appian recounts that the city was set ablaze, its flames consuming the buildings for over a week. Carthage's inhabitants, men, women, and children, were either enslaved or massacred. The city itself was systematically dismantled, with its walls and structures reduced to rubble. There is a legendary story that Roman soldiers salted the earth to curse the land, ensuring that nothing would ever grow there again. While modern scholars question the literal truth of this account, the symbolism remains significant. Rome did not merely defeat Carthage, it buried it, both metaphorically and literally, under the weight of its supremacy. This was not just a victory for Rome, it was an erasure of a rival civilization. The destruction of Carthage marked the beginning of Rome's method of complete obliteration of any rival power. This wasn't merely about subjugation, it was about sending a message. Rome would not share the world, Rome would consume it. Julius Caesar's erasure of Gaul further exemplified this brutal approach to conquest. In the 1st century BC, Caesar set his eyes on Gaul, a land populated by fiercely independent tribes. Over the course of nearly a decade, he led his legions in one of the most ruthless campaigns in Roman history. Cities that resisted were erased, and entire populations were wiped out. The most significant example was the siege of Avric in 52 BC, where Caesar's legions crushed the Gauls' last major resistance under the leadership of Vercingetorix. After the siege, 40,000 people were slaughtered not as an isolated act of war but as part of Rome as systematic policy to make rebellion unthinkable. Caesar's actions were not just military, they were psychological. By erasing entire cities, he instilled in the hearts of the Gauls and other tribes that defying Rome would lead to total destruction. This brutality extended to the siege of Numancia, where Rome's tactic of forced famine became another weapon of psychological warfare. When the small Celtiberian city refused to submit, Scipio Aemilianus surrounded it with a massive wall, cutting off food and supplies. Desperation set in, and with no way to resist, the inhabitants chose self-destruction over surrender. It wasn't just about military conquest, it was about breaking the spirit of the people, making resistance an impossible and unthinkable choice. Rome's empire was not built solely with soldiers and conquests. It was built with fear, brutality,